Hello, this is another short video of mine. No, you don't get to see me because my room's not clean, and the people at Reinert said that there should be nothing distracting in the background. Those of you who've been in my office understand. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about this chapter on Central Asia, chapter 12. And this is a chapter that honestly in the last couple of years I haven't taught because I'm not very satisfied with the way that it's organized in the book or the way that it introduces things. We don't really know all that much about this music. This is a very remote area. The music is similar between different areas as the religious practices are, but there are also significant differences. The music is largely used, at least the music that we're introduced to in the textbook, is largely used in the context of religious ceremonies. And as the book points out, and as you probably know from not only your reading but some of the listening, these pieces are very, very long. This is a vast, timeless, sparsely populated place, and the music in many ways represents or reflects that vast, timeless nature. The other thing about music that I find interesting in this context is that there is a transient nature to music. I mean, it's obvious. Once music happens, it happens. And unless you're recording it, once it's in the air, it's gone. Many of the other things associated with Tibetan and Mongolian Buddhism are the same way. In fact, some of the mandalas are not physical paintings, but are actually done with sand, so they, like the music, are also transient. The most distinctive thing about this music is the use of multiphonic singing. I suppose it was 10 or 15 years ago. There was a group of the Tuvan people who toured the United States doing Tuvan throat singing, using a very low fundamental pitch and then deriving overtones above that. This is a very distinctive kind of singing. You can get 2 or 3 notes at a time. I had a friend who could do this whistling. He could whistle multiphonic, and he used to whistle multiphonic and play his bass and double stop so he could do 4-part voicings by himself. Anyway, it's a very distinctive kind of singing. As you can see on one of the videos that I attached to the PowerPoint, it's not the only way to do it. You can also do multiphonic singing using a higher fundamental and getting these whistle tones above. If you've ever studied trumpet or trombone or French horn, any brass instrument, you know how these overtone series work, and it's really very much the same thing. You're creating a fundamental and then shaping your oral cavity to bring out these octaves and fifths above. It's really, really interesting stuff. And tone contour melodies, by this we simply mean that we're creating melodies by changing timbre and loudness far more than pitch. It's more about inflection than it is about actually changing the pitches of the notes. The other thing that's interesting, and I like to draw the common connection, is we have these very long, low fundamental pitched trumpets that are used up in the mountains. There are also in Switzerland things called alpenhorns, which look very, very much like this, only they curve up at the end. And the terrain is very similar in both. I'm going to skip through this because a lot of this is explained better in the book. This is where we learn about the trumpets and the cymbals. The video that this links to shows a guy teaching you how to play them. You don't have to necessarily watch the whole video, but I think it's kind of handy. And he does point out that they're not really used for anything that's not part of a sacred music expression. So there are chants and other things. I'm going to skip through a bunch of stuff the way I normally would do. The multiphonic singing, the bass drum is interesting in that it is struck with this odd question mark like drumstick or striker. And then we have the conical double reed instruments, which are highly decorated. They're in the picture here. I'm not going to butcher the the name because my pronunciation of this part of the world is not very good. But these are very much like Indians that we'll also find in instruments we find in India, and are clearly related to the shawm and later the oboe in Western European music. I'm going to do a little skipping. Some of these videos, by the way, are quite long. Once you watch 4 or 5 minutes and get a sense of it, I think it makes the most sense. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on is that even though Mongolia is a far distance from Tibet, there are a lot of similarities clearly in the music. And here in this map, if you look up in the left-hand corner, you see tuva. This is the source of the tuvan throat singing that we heard in the past. Whistling indoors is bad luck. If you ever go to that part of the world, whistling indoors is bad luck. It's also bad luck in theaters. So don't whistle in the theater. These literary long songs, these epic songs that were mentioned before, are very similar to epic songs that we've heard elsewhere. In sub-Saharan Africa, the bards of England, the epic poetry and song of ancient Greece, the Iliad, the Odyssey, they're all similar. They're all historic, sometimes in different ways. Another explanation of the throat singing, only it's a different technique. This instrument, the Jaws harp, this is one of the most virtuosic expressions of this type of instrument that I have found in the Mongolian tradition. You'll notice here that the bowed instruments look very much like the bowed instruments that we will later find in China and Japan. I have a sneaky suspicion that if we were able to go back in time, we would find their origins being Chinese. And that's kind of the end of the show for now. I'm going to be doing more of these short lecturettes as we go on. I've been told by the people at Reinert that I should not record an entire lecture because you won't watch it. So anyway, that's a little brief walk through Chapter 12, and thank you for watching.